Zoom wants us to use AI so bad, y'all. It's just like, AI, start the companion, start the companion. I'm like, you're not my companion today. Well, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I am Angie Schaffer, and I am the Executive Director of the Fund for Education Abroad. And I'm excited to have you all here as part of our FEA Day panel discussion, How to Philanthropy, Making Fundraising Feel Feasible. This is part of, this kind of came out of some Activate the Village calls, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm so excited to have you all here. I'm excited to have our panelists here and to talk about this thing, fundraising and philanthropy, and how to make it a little less intimidating for all of us during this time when I think a lot of organizations want to and need to do more of it to support all of our international education goals and making sure students have access to international education opportunities. So, I want to quickly introduce all of our panelists as well as our amazing moderator, Christina. So I'm going to jump right into that. We are joined by my good friend, Lamar Shambley. He is a high school Spanish teacher and the founder and executive director of Teens of Color Abroad, which is a nonprofit expanding global language learning opportunities for students of color. Through TOCA, he's supported over 1,000 students nationwide, including sponsoring U.S. passports and awarding significant scholarship funding for travel abroad. He has degrees from the College of William and Mary, shout out, show that sweatshirt, and the Relay Graduate School of Education. And I also happen to know that he is a very proud plant dad and a very good one. You're a very good plant dad, Lamar. Next up, we have Melissa Matsubura. Melissa is the Director of Study Abroad and International Education Programs at Hawai'i Pacific University, where she oversees all education abroad operations and program development. She's held roles across multiple global education organizations, including Brandeis University, Harvard's regional office in Chile, Robert College in Turkey, SIT, EIL, and YFU. Outside of work, she serves on the board of directors for Kanu Hawaii. Am I saying that correctly, Melissa? A nonprofit focused on sustainable community-driven initiatives. And Melissa is also one of our Activate the Village organizers, which is really, really important work to be doing these days. And I just happen to think Melissa is one of the most supportive colleagues in Ed Abroad that I've known. So I appreciate her being here. And next up, we'll go to Bill. Bill Gertz is the chairman of AIFS and a longtime leader in international education with more than 40 years of experience. Before entering the field, he was a journalist and spent formative time backpacking and living in Europe, experiences that shaped his global outlook. He's held numerous board and leadership roles across cultural exchange, au pair category, and gifted education organizations. And he's a native New Yorker. We were just talking about his accent, which hasn't gone anywhere. And also, fun fact about Bill, he is a writer. So I have a link to his poetry books in the presentation that we'll share with you all, and we'll drop it in the chat as well. And fun fact, proceeds from the sales of his books will benefit Toka, who we love. So thank you, Bill, for using your creativity generously. And Christina Martin-Kenny, on to Christina. So Christina is the founder of Guava Tree Strategies and is a fundraising strategist dedicated to helping nonprofits build sustainable revenue models and retain their staff. Christina is a huge advocate for staff. I learned so much from all of her LinkedIn posts about how to make sure we're caretaking for our fundraisers, often sort of a forgotten role in a lot of places and organizations, I feel. So she works with teams to support fundraising culture, support the teams there, and create environments where fundraisers and missions thrive. Christina serves on the board of directors for Solidarity Engineering, volunteers as a Girl Scout troop leader, and is a mom to two girls. She's run 9 marathons, and something tells me that there is a link between being a marathon runner and being a fundraiser. So I think that is very worth mentioning. And finally, a little about me. I am the executive director of the Fund for Education Abroad, and I am an international educator, and I've been a grants professional focused on global engagement and inclusion in ed abroad. So I've worked at universities, I've worked at a small private liberal arts college, I've worked at an organization called Cultural Vistas, and I've also I've worked for myself. I'm a tough boss. Sorry, Joelle. Um, and I've done consulting for grant writing and fundraising through my LLC. So I'm a first generation college graduate from Baltimore, and I feel like we have to keep doing this work to make sure students
Mm.
have access to education abroad opportunities. So a big part of that is going to be fundraising in the next couple of years. So I wanted to also take an opportunity just to thank our Activate the Village crew, the Kates, um, Kate Bohan and Kate Meyer, as well as Melissa and everybody who's ever joined our calls. The Activate the Village calls we have not really at a regular cadence, but basically earlier this year when we realized that a lot of legislation was being passed and a lot of funding changes were being made in the federal landscape, we basically said, what can we do? What should we do? So we started jumping on calls, and we'll drop a link in the chat to you if you'd like to join those calls in the future. It's just an open invitation, but we talk about how some of those policy changes and funding changes are changing the landscape of international education. And there's been some great conversations that have come out of those calls, including what ended up being the inspiration for today's chat. So thank you again to the team that meets to organize those and to the crew that joins us in all of those calls. And we welcome any and all of you to join us moving forward. So with that, I wanted to quickly do a survey of everybody on the call, just to get a couple of things, lined up before we jump into our panel discussion. And one of those things is we wanted to know how you feel about the word philanthropy and what words come to mind. So I'm going to post it as a poll once I can figure out exactly how to do that here in Zoom. But you're also welcome to drop some of those words as they come to mind in the chat. Um, so here comes the poll.
Mm.
Take another 2 minutes or 1 minute maybe. And maybe while we're taking that, maybe I'll ask our panelists. Christina, what comes to mind when you hear that word?
So I filled out the poll, but the first thing I put was community care. I think philanthropy at its core is people coming together to care for their communities.
And Lamar, what about you?
I think the first thing that came to mind for me was it was three words in one. I put pay it forward. I think
Mm.
of folks who were previously given to and poured into by someone, and so they see this as an opportunity for them to give to the future.
You. Melissa, what about you?
Yeah, similar. The notion and culture of kind of giving back and supporting the community and things of that nature. So selfless giving.
How about you, Bill?
Pretty much the same thing, helping people who, for one reason or another, either can't help themselves or the government is unwilling to provide the funds.
Mm, thank you all. So, I'm going to share the results now. I don't know why they're not popping up. Time consuming, networking, goodness, difference making, essential, collective, impact, community came up a lot.
Yeah.
Money, need, networking, 1800s. That's a good one. Good, pay, scary, removing, warmth, students, challenging, important. So thank you for all of those. Um, and we'll get back to the presentation. And then I guess the second poll we wanted to launch was asking everybody about their fundraising experience, what levels they're coming into this conversation with. And that does not need to be there. We have no answer in mind, but we just wanted to kind of see where people were coming from and what they felt about that. So let me get that launched. So we have four choices. Yes, loads of fundraising experience, some sort of, kind of, maybe a little. And I've asked the ATM for money, and that's about it. All right. It looks like most people, 55% currently of respondents, are at about the sort of kind of level, which makes a lot of sense. Sometimes I still feel like I'm at the sort of kind of level, and I've been doing this for a long time. It's easy to feel that way. All right. Well, thank you all. So we will jump into the conversation now. Um, and I just thought this was funny when I asked for Canva's images about fundraising, about study abroad, and about philanthropy. These were the images that popped up. Canva said, okay, this is, let me think for you. But that's apparently what Canva thinks study abroad is. So amazing. And I've never had that much money sitting on my laptop, but if that's what Canva says philanthropy is all about, then have at it. So I'm going to kick it over to Christina to kick us off.
Thanks, Angie. I'm so excited to be here and facilitate this conversation. We have an amazing group of panelists, so thank you all for taking your time. I hope this is helpful, productive, and informative for everybody. And so let's jump right in. This first question is for Angie, Lamar, and Melissa. When you first began seeking philanthropic support, what was your biggest hurdle and what helped you get past it? Lamar, why don't you kick us off? Sorry to throw you on the spot.
No, all good. Thank you very much. And sorry, I just have to say this because my eyes lit up when I saw that she was in the room. Lisa Grimes, back when I was a college junior and I just come back from my very first international experience, just got a passport. I knew that I wanted to study abroad again, and Lisa Grimes helped me to write my application for the Gilman. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And Lisa sat with me in the basement of, I believe it was Washington Hall at William and Mary, and she like walked me through the process. I got the Gilman to then study abroad for 6 months in Seville, Spain. That changed my life. That then inspired me to become a high school Spanish teacher. So I think a lot of what I'm doing now is because people like Lisa and other folks have poured into me, whether a small amount or a large amount, to show me that there was an entire world out there. So I knew that I wanted to pay it forward. Definitely, it was Tucker. It was Tucker Hall. Thank you very much, Teresa. And so just thank you so much for being here. To answer your question, when I first started, I think the biggest hurdle was showcasing impact for an unyet proven program. I knew the impact that study abroad and language learning would have on students. But I hadn't done it yet. I was a teacher here in New York for 10 years. In the last 5 years, I was a high school Spanish teacher. So I feel like I'm literally the living embodiment of how studying abroad and learning languages can impact someone's life. And so when I started going to foundations and sharing my ideas for the program, first off, they didn't know who I was, right? So they had never seen me organize a program or hear of me organizing a program. And I didn't have the numbers, I didn't have the stories to share with them. And so it took a bit of convincing on the front end, and it took for people to take a chance on me. And I feel like once that happened, then things sort of were able to snowball. So I think it's showcasing this dream, right? The impact of this idea that you have that might be the hardest part to show at first.
Melissa, thanks, Lamar. That was a great answer.
Love that. Sure. So for some context, I represent a four-year liberal arts minority serving institute. So our students have high financial need. I'm a one-person office, very under-resourced. So the biggest hurdle in securing funding from my institution to support study abroad scholarships or my own department is that my university always tells me they have no money. Every year we've had budget cuts or been told to be mindful of our spending. There are a few things that have helped me in the past. So I would say solidify and be clear about what you're asking for, aligning your pitch and request to what matters most to your university and what they're willing to spend money on. And so that may take some research. And then having data and statistics to kind of back you up. And just really understanding your institution helps a lot. So think through what is the process for requesting the kind of funding that you're seeking. How are decisions made about budget allocation, and who makes those decisions? I think timing is also really key. So I definitely cannot secure all the funding that I need at any time for anything that I want. So it is, again, important to stay informed of what's top of mind for your university. Sometimes it's just not the right time for me to push for my department, and I genuinely want the university to focus on other areas. So, your request needs to be reasonable and relevant if you want to be taken seriously now and then also in the future. I'd say also, don't reinvent the wheel. Like if there is a pathway in which another department on campus was able to secure similar funding, kind of look into that. And then lastly, kind of building partnerships on campus to help amplify your narrative. So I'm happy to go into more detail, but I also want to just save some time for everyone else.
Thanks, Melissa. I really appreciate that we have the dual perspectives of nonprofit and higher education because I think that represents our audience today. So I appreciate having both of those perspectives. Angie, over to you.
I think one of my biggest hurdles was feeling comfortable being myself in the ask. I just didn't have a lot of confidence, I think. I'm not used to I didn't grow up having access to a lot of people who had a lot of money. And, learning that I was maybe going to be talking to a prospective donor that was worth this amount or, had these stats or gave to these kinds of organizations or was known to only give if you, sold them on this particular thing. That was weird. It was hard. It was strange. I didn't have a lot of confidence. I felt like, you see all these really curated, like, probably from your colleges or other causes you may give to, you might get these mailings and it's these super curated messages and it's like, very big, lofty language. And I just didn't feel very confident asking for money in those circles or asking for support, and feeling like I could be myself in that ask. And so I think that remains sometimes a hurdle, but ultimately, like I have found that if I stay to what I believe and am really talking about what I believe in, it comes across. It doesn't really matter the words I use to describe it or how polished that it is, I think people appreciate that more than I realized they ever would. And that has been my biggest hurdle. It sometimes is still a hurdle, but it's one that I think is worth kind of pushing through.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think in today's world, one of the biggest challenges in fundraising is that increasingly people who are fundraising are people who have never been in those kinds of spaces. And that's where, a lot of education and training and professional development is really, really critical to investing in so that people have the resources and support to be able to be in these kinds of rooms. Bill, the next question's for you. When you're considering organizations to fund, what is something you often want to know about them that you can't easily find?
Well, I do like to, we fund all kinds of organizations, small and large. And I prefer, I actually love working with small startup organizations, working with Lamar when he was starting, and working with a lot of people that come back from study abroad and decide to start a tiny little foundation. I mean, the few things that we need to check out, of course, is the 501(c)(3. It has to be a legitimate nonprofit. I also do look at if I don't know the charity, and most times I get to know the charity really quickly because we're fairly small in terms of, I do most of the outreach, and it's mostly people that I network with. But I always want to find out if the nonprofit is, we look at the salaries of the officers of the nonprofit to make sure it's a legitimate nonprofit, and that's all available, in their tax returns and through GuideStar. So we can find out, because there are a lot of charities out there, there are a lot of organizations out there that are not 100% legit. So we do have to do our due diligence. That's very important. But again, the personal contact for me is the most important. Really, and seeing the passion of the organizations is really the key thing for us. But I can find out it's a little harder, as Lamar was saying, when it's an organization without a track record. So we do like to see a track record. We do need to see an impact report certainly after the first year, but even before the first year, we want to see the background of the founder of the organization that's asking for the funds.
Thanks, Bill, because that's really valuable advice.
Mhm.
This is for everybody. What is your favorite thing about fundraising or philanthropy? And what is your least favorite thing? Melissa, let's start with you on this one.
Sure, I'd say, witnessing what students gain from an experience that would not have been possible if not for the scholarship they receive never gets old. I mean, that's definitely the best, and seeing how they've changed. Least favorite, not being able to grant and funding to everyone and everything that I want. I definitely feel like at least once a year, my wife is always trying to talk me down from giving like all our money away to one or two students. Um, Honestly, I also just really hate asking for anything, especially funding. So I'm in Angie's boat. Yeah.
I think that's a challenge that most of us can identify with, of just wanting to be able to help as many people as you can and having the access and capacity to do that. Thanks for sharing that. Angie.
Ooh, I think the one of my favorite things is getting to see how many people care about something that I care about, that I totally thought only other people who did this work cared about. Getting to see that people who are doctors and lawyers and people who work in K through 12 education and people who work in big corporations and are manager, like if they have some kind of a way that you can connect them to their study abroad experience or just the value of travel, things like that. It's been so cool to just see how many people will show up for the work that we do. And we take for granted the people in our field that constantly support this work. Whether it's through donations or just, working 12 hours a day sometimes to get students abroad, those kinds of things. But it's been really my favorite thing to connect with people outside of it because it allows me to just see how powerful the work we do is, and that some of them they don't need like the kinds of things that I know a lot of you all have to do to justify the work that we're doing at the university level, or the reports and things like that. Sometimes they're just like, give me one great story about a student and that's it. I'm hooked. You're my go-to. Um, my least favorite thing has probably just been, I think, realizing that we're the priorities we have are becoming increasingly deprioritized in the federal funding landscape, and also, by I feel like sometimes with philanthropy, we're competing against things that even I'm like, wow, that's a really valuable thing to support. Um, I live in Baltimore, lots of nonprofits doing really, really incredible work, and everything is just stretched a little thinner these days. And so it's becomes disappointing, I think, to see the ebbs and the flows of where the work you do is prioritized and then not prioritized. But all the more, I think, justification that we all need to build a community of support around the things we care about to make a go of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think everybody here has heard this, but collecting stories is just so, so critical to your fundraising. And every organization I've ever worked with runs into that. We've told this person's story so many times, and just get stories as much and as often as you can. And sometimes people don't feel like they have a story to tell. And then you start having a conversation with them and you realize that they have a really powerful story that they might not have thought of. Bill, what about you? Favorite and least favorite thing about fundraising or philanthropy?
Yeah, my favorite thing is definitely seeing the results, either through the impact reports or personally meeting students. I'm on a lot of Zooms and webinars with the actual students who've gone on the programs, and with the AIFS students around the world when they come in as one of the things that we fund. I like the expansion of what we're doing now. We're involved with 32 charities. I think growing that is great, especially because we know we have to pick up some of the gaps from the federal government. My least favorite is any kind of bureaucracy. I am not into long forms or long proposals, and I do have to convince everyone on my board, the Cyril Taylor board, that we need to fund this charity. But my passion comes through, and they kind of, so far I've had really good luck convincing people. So we're funding, charities and universities really in UK and in the US. And I don't enjoy the paperwork and making sure that we have everything we need to have, and the scheduling. That's my least favorite to try. We have a very small staff, so we're trying to do this kind of without bureaucracy, because we want the money to not be spent on administrative people and things. So yeah, I'm enjoying giving money away. It's a lot of fun, actually. So yeah.
Well, this wasn't in my bio, but I should mention that I am an AIFS alum.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lamar, over to you. Favorite and least favorite thing about philanthropy?
Yeah, I think as a teacher, of course, my favorite is the students, so I won't harp on the storytelling. But I think something that's my favorite now that wasn't my favorite before, um, is making new friends with funders. I think when I first started this, I was like, I don't know what this relationship is going to be like. Do I have to be super formal? I sort of live in a bubble in New York where I'm surrounded by my friends. And so this gives me an opportunity to meet someone who's probably a very different age than I am, in a very different tax bracket, from a very different community. And so I just see this as an opportunity to get to know more about them and to create a friend. We're all humans at the end of the day. We all care about other people. And I feel like that's what is really the root of it all. I think when I first met Bill, I like found out, first off, this man is excellent at making soups, right? And so it's like get to know something about the person, and then also he's excellent taste in music.
Yeah.
And just by like sitting down over lunch and like yes, talking about Toka, but also getting to know his life story is like one of my favorite things to do. So I think that's my one of my favorite parts about fundraising. I think least favorite, of course, at times there's pressure, right? Especially right now during giving season. Giving Tuesday was a whirlwind. Everybody's asking for money for Giving Tuesday. And so that pressure can feel a bit overwhelming, especially because I'm connected to the students. And so I know where this funding can go. And so the pressure, sometimes I have to just do my best to mitigate it.
Lamar, that is a take on fundraising that I've never heard and I have so much respect for about developing friendships. There is such an inherent power dynamic in philanthropy that really needs to be a sign of the time, needs to be a sign of the past. And yeah, really just getting on the same level because I don't think funders see that, but it is this it just is inherent. And when you break it down and like share soup and musical interests,
Yeah.
it really, I think it creates a stronger partnership and makes philanthropy really about its core of being what I think it is as community care. So
Yes,
thanks for sharing.
I mean, if I could just add one thing. I mean, as some, I grew up without any money, as a kid, and to me, the friendships are everything. I know all the people from all the, we don't just write checks out. We know the people. We sit down with them. We have lunch. We talk about that. It's so important to break that barrier down. And maybe there's a new dawn coming where, it's a different type of funder than there used to be. Where we've lived all kinds of lives. We're not from. It's not Andrew Carnegie necessarily, but we are friends with the people that we work with, just like we're friends with the advisors or the international ed directors. It's the same.
I might even take that a step further. And I will say one of my other least favorite things about philanthropy, and Christina, I think you do a good job sort of navigating some of these conversations on LinkedIn and in other spaces, but there's like this, it feels sometimes like competition with other organizations that are mission driven that may be similar to you. And I go back a lot to something that one of our board members used to say a lot, which was a rising tide lifts all boats. And right now, there is a lot of competition for limited funding. And it's my kind of initial reaction and instinct is like to connect with the other organizations doing similar mission driven work, right? One of the reasons we're holding this call is because we know that the landscape is changing and more funders are interested in local impact. FEA is a nationally serving organization. We'll find our people. I trust that people will still support us, but organizations and institutions doing things more locally, now is your time. Like harness that, right? And utilize organizations and connect with other organizations to figure out what is hitting with the storytelling you're doing and what's not, and where might there be collaborations that are possible. I would like to see a philanthropic landscape that's less about competition and more about sort of community building to lift all the boats of the things that we care about.
Yeah, Angie, I think
Maybe one of these days we can do a whole session on partnerships and philanthropy and eliminating scarcity mindset because I could talk for an hour about everything you just said. Bill, please, you were going to add
Yeah,
something.
I was just going to say a lot of this is kind of happening naturally. It's very interesting. I know that TOCA is connected to FIE, which is another organization that we fund, and they go to the conference in London every April. So, and they're all starting to get to know each other. I think it's fascinating, and I believe that there's room for every organization. Really, I really do.
Thanks for adding that. Well, we're going to move on. This has been such a great discussion, and I love when the conversation just unfolds like this. So, Melissa and Lamar, whoever wants to answer first, when you've made an ask or approached a funder, what has been most effective, and what do you think maybe hasn't worked so well when you're trying to get funding?
Do you want to go, Lamar, or or
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
can
He
you?
wants me to go first.
Melissa, it's on you.
Sorry, I was just like typing down some of the things that Angie was saying. Um, in terms of like researching and identifying funders and donors, or in terms of when
No,
we
I
make
think
the
an
ask?
actual, like actually making the ask.
Sure. So I do feel that what has been effective is like aligning a pitch to what matters most to my university and what they're willing to spend money on. So really getting familiar with your institutional priorities so you can tie your ask to your university's strategic plan, mission, or priorities. You're always more likely to receive funding if you can demonstrate what you're asking for will also help them reach their goals. So and what is your university willing to spend money on? So finding out what has been funded in the past and especially most recently, because this can help to indicate what they're willing to fund at the time of your ask, because timing is also very, very key. Also, if another department was successful, maybe they're willing to share a roadmap with you about what worked in the past. Again, that rising tide idea. I think data is also incredibly crucial. So use data to support your pitch. I think, for common university priorities are retention, student success, graduation rates, gainful employment. So being able to use quantitative and qualitative data to demonstrate the value of ed abroad and how you're contributing to those broader objectives. So I'm constantly touting that study and internship opportunities abroad help to attract and retain ambitious, successful students. And so, I've been able to verify that, like, on average, we retain over 80% of students who study abroad through HPU compared to our university average of retention, which is about petering on 60%. So that speaks volumes, or that the average GPA of HPU students who study abroad is 3.5. So working with your institutional research team and having those stats at your fingertips can always help. I think my next focus is going to be more towards like post-graduation employment statistics for students who participate in global programs. How about you, Lamar?
Yeah, I think you nailed one of the ones that I was going to say. I think data is really important for the data nerds out there. I think like showcasing the impact of the work is really helpful. Something else that's been effective is just storytelling, right? Being able to share. I know we spoke about student stories, um, so yeah, being able to communicate that. I think what's also been really effective for us is showcasing in-kind donations that we receive, but also some of our other donors and supporters. A couple of months ago, I went to a foundation and I did the whole pitch. And I forgot to mention that we were highlighted on for Rick Steves Europe. And so one of the board members for the organization was like, "Wait, Lamar, you didn't tell him that you know Rick Steves." And I was like, "Oh yeah, Uncle Rick." And then the other board members that were watching the pitch were like, "You know Rick Steves?" And I was like, "Oh, actually don't know him, but yes, we work with Rick Steves Europe." And so I think showcasing other folks that contribute to your organization shows that you're not just going to this one specific location to support with everything, but rather you've thought about who else in this field could support the work that we do. So I think data, storytelling, and showcasing either in-kind donations or other funders that support your cause is really helpful. I think least effective, and I think Bill would probably agree with this. Sorry, it's one of my pet peeves when I'm listening to people present and there are so many words on the screen that I want to read along while they're talking, and it's hard to focus. And so I think just like lessening the words on the screen, I think photos and videos tell a great story, but it should be a lot of words that are coming directly from you. And so let the photos and videos in the presentation guide what you want to say, right? And don't overwhelm folks with reading too much because it's going to be hard to focus on what you have to say.
Great, great advice.
That is. And Bill, on the opposite side, what really makes a request for funding stand out or fall flat for you?
Well, again, it's really the personal connections because most of our grants are through people that we meet networking. So we don't have people blindly sending in proposals and, I mean, if someone knows someone who knows someone, that's a different story. But so the personal connection and the passion of the presenter is everything for me personally. Because if they're just sending out a canned approach to, 500 different people, I'm going to know that because I have a lot of experience in reading proposals throughout my career. So I think the passion, the ability to communicate, with me, so I can go back to my board and say these people are great. And that's a really, when you see someone like, just to give you an example, like, Alan Goodman of IIE. I mean, just talking with him all those years and funding a lot of some of the IIE work, it's just, I could tell his passion, how serious he was about it. And I think that comes through when you get to do your pitch, that you're passionate, and you do research about the organization so people know what we do at CTCF and what I do and what I've done. So a lot of that, comes through, rather than a canned presentation with I agree with Lamar, a lot of words. I'm never going to read it. I get so much stuff across my desk. I probably won't read the whole proposal. I'll end up skimming it. But if it's a great video, with some kids in it, some students who are on location, I'm definitely going to watch that. I love, I grew up watching television, so to me, it's like, and the Rick Steves story is a great story. I think that, he does such a great job and gives so much money away, for all his charitable work. So, it's really the passion. I think that's what has to come through for us to really go ahead.
I appreciate you sharing that because sometimes I have my own clients will say to me, we have this great video. Should we send it with a funder? And I always say, it can't hurt. I don't know if they're going to watch it or not. And I mean, I'm sure it's different with everybody, but I appreciate being able to say, well, I know at least one funder that will watch the videos.
I'm going to watch it, especially if it's short. If it's a
Yeah.
long video, there's no way. But if it's 2, 3 minutes, I'm watching it. I have time. So
I want to make sure we leave time for questions. Angie, do you think we have time for one more, or do you want to open it up to the audience?
Yeah, let's do one more and then we can open it up because we do have some questions coming in that are great.
Okay, great. So this one's a little bit tough, but given the shifts in the federal funding landscape, where do you see philanthropy playing a role in supporting education of broad access? And what do you hope to see in, philanthropy playing a role in this world? I'll start with Bill here.
yeah, I think I've been saying this for a while now with the short federal funding, and we actually don't have that much federal funding in the scheme of things. Even when you think of the Gilman grants, it's only $17 million, which sounds like a lot, but there are funders out there and private people who are giving hundreds of millions of dollars to universities. And I think with the federal government, I think that's the next place to look at, is foundations and private individuals who have, again, we always try to find who has studied abroad, and that's and has it changed their lives. But I think this is a critical element, as important as any other cause there is. So I don't think we've done the job of going to the the Bill Gates, is all these foundations out there with hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it's not easy and it's going to be difficult to get it done, but it just takes one, and then you could start a giant, fund, because the main reason study abroad is not growing much, up 6% last year, but it's not returned yet to the 2019. It's still at 300,000 students. It's because there's not enough money. So that's what I'm thinking, and that's what we're trying to do, provide more money for, community colleges are underserved, 4-year colleges, first generation. There's so many students that want to go. I think I saw a statistic that 80% of incoming students want to study abroad. And they don't, it's still 2% or 5%, however you want to calculate it. So there's a great need for funds. When we talk about let's tell our stories, Storytelling is important, and there are a lot of organizations working on storytelling now, and a few new ones coming out in the next couple of months. But storytelling and surveys is only part of it. The other part of it is securing the funds to give to students who can't afford to go. I mean, it's pretty simple, and I think we need to do a better job in that.
I'd love to piggyback on Bill's response if I could. So I completely agree. I think we need to get creative and think outside of the box to expand potential funding sources. It could be state funding, county funding, community foundations, private foundations, maybe even embassies and consulates of other countries in your city, like Chamber of Commerce, business sector. With Trump's big, beautiful bill, it does provide incentives for businesses to donate to nonprofits. So maybe there's an opportunity for all of us there. And I also think that we as a field need to come together, to work together and learn from one another. As Angie mentioned, this is one of the reasons our Activate the Village meeting started. And I didn't agree to be a part of this panel because I know everything or have the most success at securing funding. I agreed so that I could learn from all of these panelists and all of you. Most of you are probably already doing everything that I just mentioned, and likely more. And so, please share. What I love about our field is that I think we're closer to the rising tides metaphor of lifting all ships than most fields. I love that our field is not about fighting for the same piece of pie. It's about how can we work together to make a bigger pie so more students benefit. And so, if we can figure out a way to all work together and figure out how to make Congress or the business sector or foundations or institutions or the general public recognize that global education is a funding priority, I really feel that we all have a better chance of securing more funding. What was the second part of that question? Or maybe I answered both.
Yeah, you answered both. Just for Angie and Lamar, if you both want to answer before we get to questions. The question was about where do you see philanthropy playing a role in supporting education abroad access, or what do you hope to have to see from philanthropy in this space?
Yeah, I'll add here just a success story. Um, I identify as a millennial, so I'm pretty adept at social media. I'm not Gen Z, they're way better at it. But I would say don't be afraid to use social media as a way to connect with local companies or organizations that might support the work that you do. One of our biggest funders literally sent us a message on Instagram and was like, hey, we love what you all are doing. Can we set up a call? And I was like, I don't know if this message is real. This came through an Instagram versus email, but let me respond and see. And this is how our partnership started with Base Travel. They're a luggage company. And so now they sponsor luggage for all of our students and backpacks and water bottle slings. And it all started because they were like, hey, we really like your social media. And so it started with a conversation there. So I think a good idea would be like look in your local area and see if there's a business or a company that could align with supporting in a different way than just financially, right? Being that we now have this partnership, our students have luggage that lasts them when they go to college so that they can continue to look for study abroad opportunities, right? And so although that wasn't a financial give, that gave our students the resources that they need to continue looking for education abroad experiences. Right.
And I think I will just say that I think this kind of came out in the word cloud that we had as part of the poll earlier. I think when people think philanthropy, they often think like big money. Like if I can only give $5, is this organization even going to care, right? What will that do for them? And I think a big piece of that is yes, organizations care. For many of us, if you're a first time, donor, or even if you don't have funding to give, but you're able to give of your time and volunteer, do a like volunteer application review, or if like Lamar's having an event in New York, could you come and like, I don't know, could you go get chips at Costco to support the event? Like things like that are ways to loop in with organizations who are doing work that people care a lot about. And the great thing about that is it kind of when you're on the mailing lists and you're getting information from these organizations whose missions you believe in, it actually equips you to be an advocate for that cause in other ways, in more vocal ways. FEA has been part of Advocacy Day with NAFSA. I know that the forum is going to be doing some advocacy work soon. But advocacy isn't just limited, to those channels and getting all the way to a congressperson. You don't have to go to the Hill or be part of a big protest. You can write things. You can take a story and be like, oh, let me tell my city council person about this. I wonder if they've heard about this. And so being a part of an organization's work at any level is philanthropic and equips you to be a better advocate. And in this shifting sort of federal financial landscape that we're seeing, advocacy is going to be a tool just as powerful as giving $1 or $5 or $1 million potentially to an organization if you can get the right ear of somebody who could help you to be a change maker. So I think that's where I see other opportunities for work in this space. And then, just not devaluing the messaging that you're providing and the voice you're giving the causes that you care about, that it does matter that you're vocal about things you care about.
Thanks, Angie. All right, let's open it up to questions. I saw one in the chat that I'm going to lead with from Kyle about how do you get meetings, especially if you don't roll in networks with deep pockets. Kyle's institutional advancement office doesn't assign advancement officers to non-academic units. I formerly worked in higher ed advancement. My former colleague and office mate, Meg Riley, is on the call. Hi, Meg. And so I hear that. I'm going to let Melissa answer that question because I think it's higher ed specific. But if anybody else on the panel has some thoughts, please weigh in. Oh, Melissa, you're on mute.
I thought this was more directed towards Bill. Wait, sorry, I lost. Was it not in terms of like
I think it was just a thanks to Bill, but I think the question about navigating higher ed. I mean, well, also Kyle, if you want to say who you'd prefer to answer the question, feel free.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much. This has been really excellent. I don't mind who answers it. If anyone, even on the call, has experience with this, it's clear to me that as supportive as the advancement office is at my institution, they just don't have capacity to give someone to us. And so that is going to follow me and my team to actually send out those emails, those cold calls, which I know I hate personally. So I'm just looking for some advice if anyone's found success, if you're the one who has to make the ask and you don't have those networks yet to how to get started.
Sure.
I
Oh no,
whoops.
go ahead.
I could say one thing real quick is that for me personally, LinkedIn has been fantastic. People, send me DMs on LinkedIn. I think you have to find the actual people. It seemed to me you have to find the actual people who are basic decision makers and send them a note. That's one way to do it anyway.
Yeah, I was curious about how to reach out to networks that you're not aware of, and that is what our advancement team does. I mean, I have a different approach in terms of what I'm hoping to work with the advancement office, and they have been receptive to the idea. So I was interested in doing like a fundraising campaign specifically targeted to our alum who have studied abroad with like a tailored message directly from me and just kind of reminding them of what they gained and how just like a little bit of funding can go. So that was one potential way that I was going to work with our advancement office. So I was going to try to figure out, what are some of the campaigns that they've done in the past? And if I could just use that same mechanism in which to kind of do that same broad outreach, but instead it's like, so it would fall on me. So falling on me in terms of like being able to provide at least the names and hopefully the contact information from the alumni who have studied abroad so that I can provide that to our advancement office. So they did need that. And then they have their ways of possibly seeing if they have up-to-date contact information that I might not be able to have. And then kind of drafting kind of that tailored message, but then using their mechanisms in terms of how they do like a broader outreach. So that was one way I was going to try to use our advancement office. But yeah, it gets tricky for sure.
I think with your experience, Kyle, I have found it when I worked at institutions, And I'm imagining at organizations larger than FEA, which are most organizations, because we're two people. So I can't be hyper protective of our donor stuff from Joelle and vice versa. She can't protect our student stories from me. But when I worked at institutions, there is definitely sort of this protective, compartmentalized nature in some institutions of advancement and development being very separate from the rest of the work of the organization or the institution. And one of the ways that I had a little impact at one of the institutions was to say, okay, well, you're using study abroad as a selling point for recruiting students that come here. You put it in our admissions materials, you're putting it in our recruitment materials, you're highlighting these stories in the alumni magazines and things like that. How do you not see that it's something that people care about? Recent alum, parents of current students, and our alum who are reading. I mean, if you think they want to read about it, then you must think they care about it. And it was, sometimes funny. Like I would literally collect the admissions brochures and be like, see, you're putting it out there. People know us for this. So people will maybe want to give to us for this too. And it took some convincing, but it did eventually lead to some scholarships. Then we had to be a little, then there's the other side of it, which is that you are successful and you do get a donor, and then they want to really restrict that scholarship. But that's going to be activate the village call like 14 later this year. But yes, you might get that donor who's like, yes, and I only want to fund students who are studying computer engineering, who are going to England and who are juniors and going for a semester. And you're like, oh Lord, don't need that either. So then it becomes a little bit of a back and forth.
Thanks, Angie. Okay, do we have time for one more question? There's a few in the chat that Angie posted, but if anybody live has a question, I would love to prioritize them. I can't see people if anybody's like raising their hand, but if you want to just unmute. If not, we'll just go to one of the ones that Angie posted. Oh, I'm gonna try to pick a good one here. I feel like we've answered some of these. Well, this isn't really a question, but I think both Lamar and Melissa really touched on connecting the study abroad experience to students' professional outcomes, right? For those in the higher ed setting, Bill laid out some of these statistics for us, right? About the percentage of students that are actually studying abroad. And so if you're in a higher ed advancement office and you're trying to find the very few students who studied abroad or alumni that studied abroad to give to the current program, you might have to get more creative about a broader donor base and connecting individuals with those opportunities. So I think with that, we've got a minute left. I want to just thank everybody. Thank Melissa and Bill and Lamar. Thanks, Angie, for having me. This was really like, I saw the email about this and sent Angie a note and said, I'd love to be involved with this one day in the future. And she asked if I was free this week. So I was really happy to jump in and connect with all of you. Study abroad's a huge passion of mine as an alum. It's giving season, y'all. It's December 11th. My thoughts and prayers are with you. I am a lifelong fundraiser. I know, like Lamar said, Giving Tuesday was intense. I know this is a really, really challenging time of the year, and I'm wishing you all so much success in sending support your way. I'll let Angie close us out, but thanks everybody for being here and for taking your Thursday in December to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much. Thanks to all of our panelists, Christina, Bill, Lamar, Melissa. It was so great to have you. I really, really appreciate you all being here and sharing your expertise. I just put everybody's logos up. If any of these are interesting, you can always reach out and we'll make sure you get connected to the right people if you'd like to be involved in any way. And then we will be sending out the recording of this, and we'll also be posting it to our YouTube channel. And one of the slides has the tips and advice we've been taking throughout out the call. So thank you to Joelle for helping with that in the background. But yeah, we wish you all the best. We know this is important. We're all, I think I could say, here for you all. If you ever wanted to like run a pitch by us or something like that, I mean, that's what we're here for. That is, I know FEA living its mission by supporting organizations who are opening access to study abroad for students, whether it's K through 12, whether it's college, whether it's adults and learners and anybody in between. So thank you all for being here, for prioritizing this in this busy time, and for doing this work. And we are going to make a difference for a lot of students moving forward.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.